Well, do we say good evening or good afternoon, everybody? Thank you for coming along here and attending our annual general meeting at the City of Launceston. We know that we meet here on the unceded lands of Palawa people, the original ongoing owners. Thank you to those that have made the effort to come along and those who are streaming in from wherever you may be. We've got a lot of apologies that we've gone through here, but I can see that we do have in the room, we've got representation from Senator Tammy Tyrrell's office with Tim joining us here. We've got Brian Beswick here as well, in the corner there, on behalf of the City Mission and on behalf of Dr. Joe Fearman. We've got also... we've got Vicky from the Friends of the QV Mag, I can see up there as well. And we've got representation from the Launceston Airport too. Thanks for coming along. I've got lots of apologies from lots of politicians, and I will read them out. Michael Ferguson, the Honourable Rosemary Armitage, Senator Wendy Askew, the Honourable Guy Barnett, Deputy Premier, the Honourable Nick Digan, the Honourable Joe Palmer, Senator Helen Polly, the Honourable Tanya Rattray, Simon Wood MP, Cicely Rossell MP, Rebecca Pentland MP, the Honourable Kerry Vincent, Craig Perkins from Taswater, Trish O'Duffy as well from the Northern Suburbs Community Centre. We've got a couple of councillor apologies with Councillor Palmer and Councillor McMahon. How are you going, Councillor Kai, for time? Okay, for now, okay. Thank you, and thank you again to those who have made the effort to come along. Oh, and a last-minute apology from the new commander of the Northern District of Taspol with Marco there. So that's the opening attendance and apologies. At number 2, we have the declaration of interest. A councillor must declare any interest that a councillor has in a matter before any discussion on that matter commences. Any declarations of interest? There being none, we'll move through to the confirmation of minutes. The recommendation is that the minutes of the annual general meeting, which was conducted on the 7th of December last year, be confirmed as true and correct record. Somebody to move? I've got Mr. Smith, and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Yep, you guys can vote too. This is the annual general meeting, so that's good. And we've got a bit of a hand count as well. The motion is carried. Okay, public question time. Public questions. On notice, they are published as a part of this agenda. So we move to public questions without notice at 4.2. Do we have any public questions without notice? Mr. Smith. Or you can just point it toward Mrs. Smith has a good voice.
Last year, you remember, Mr. Mayor, I had a number of questions that related to items on the agenda of the annual general meeting, and I remember it was a bit problematic. I'd like firstly to read the section. This is a good practice guide issued by the Tasmanian Government for annual general meetings, and I'll read the first section if I may. The primary purpose of a council annual general meeting is to allow the public to ask questions about the contents of the council's annual general report and to provide an opportunity, etc. Obviously, this, as you may have read, comes up as a matter that relates to a general meeting, questions on agenda items. Are you happy to take questions on the annual report today, please?
I'll just go clarification from the CEO. Yes.
Thank you very much. Excellent. You asked the CEO, I noticed the other day the CEO was on riding shotgun with the sweeper, the new sweeper council bought, street sweeper. Don't ever tell me what it cost. But Wellington Street and Bathurst Street are streets that form part of the National Highway 1. Council doesn't sweep those. State growth sweep those 4 times a year. I understand there's a bit of demarcation between who does it, but it's and perhaps the CEO could shed light. He was on that run. They only do it 4 times a year. It's a very busy road, Wellington Street. It's part of the National Highway. It doesn't really get serviced enough. Council won't sweep it. Is that something council considered doing, or is this something that prevents, something legally that prevents council from sweeping those 2 roads, certainly that section through the city?
No, we can take that on notice. I can see some conversations going with our officers. This is obviously one of those moments when, as you said, it does bring up some conversations. So yes, we can take that on notice and look into what that would require, what advocacy we can play in that space.
Thank you. Annual General Report, Strategic Priority 4, has 2 in the comments. One of them is an urban design, and the other is a pilot place plan, and that's been adopted previous month, which I call City Heart 2. And it talks of the process it's been through, its previous planning documents it's reviewed. One of those documents I've asked before about is the Launceston City Heart project, 2-way street conversions, December 2014 by GHD. And it wouldn't have escaped your notice that I was a bit scathing about the relevance of that to converting certainly Charles Street and Patterson Street from 1-way to 2-way. I'm not an expert in traffic engineering, but I've got a bit of a suspicion that they haven't quite got it right. Is there a possibility council could look at it with a view to having someone peer review it? I have no gravitas in pulling it apart, but I can, but I shouldn't be able to. Certainly, is that something, I understand there'd be a monetary cost involved in getting someone to peer review, but as it's so fundamental to everything that City Heart 2 stands on traffic-wise, could you consider that, please?
With the endorsed plan for City Heart 2, this is something we can take on notice and have a look as to where and if that fits into the process going forward.
Considering a peer review, thank you. Question on the, in the annual report, City Prom is listed as $563,000 for that term, and I think the next year this year is due to be about 589,000. That comes to about 1.1 million, and it does in the agenda today list the activities that are undertaken. I want to be kind, but I don't feel I'm getting $1.1 million. Would it be better perhaps to bring City Prom back within council? The savings surely would of accommodation for officers and executive and the support. Is it something council could look at? I know you've just had a review of City Prom. I know there's another 3 years to go on the funding, but even in the next year or 2, it could come within council. I think council could make good use of that 1.1 million.
Thank you for the comment on that. And I just want the clarification on ensuring that the 1.1 million that you're referring to, it's an increase of the 530,000 to 580, not adding those 2 totals together and making $1 million. No,
I'm saying 2 years. I'm saying what's in the annual report.
Oh, got you. Sorry, I just wanted to make that. Wanted to clarify that. I'm happy to throw the CEO around those conversations, and obviously there's some changes that are going through with Launceston Central at the moment with their CEO taking up further opportunities, but happy to take that on notice in terms of the conversations that are happening internally as to council's view.
Back to the City Heart Stage 2. City Heart ran a report asking the people of Launceston. They had 4,483 engagements about converting 1-way streets to 2-way streets. When they were asked, and this is 2015, 35% of those respondents were for converting 1-way streets to 2-way. 17% were undecided, and 47% wanted them left the way they were. I don't find any of that sentiment. It's the only sentiment City Heart seems to have garnered as a response from the public about converting 1-way streets to 2-way streets. How has that got lost? I only found it by accident. It's something find quite strange it's forgotten about.
Okay, I'll take that on notice too, because 2015 was quite a time ago. To see what engagement there's been perhaps prior or since that and the work that's happened, we'll have to take the notice to have a look into those questions. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any further questions without notice? Okay, we'll continue through the agenda, which is the annual report at 5.1, Mayor and CEO reports and presentation. The summary of the presentation is that we will provide an opportunity to watch with visual aid on the screen. If we might have a little bit of assistance, CFO, from the lighting in the room just behind you on the other side there. Ooh.
2023-24 financial year saw a huge number of achievements at the City of Launceston. The year kicked off with the council voting to contribute $15 million in funding towards a major redevelopment of the historic Albert Hall's eastern wing, a project which will ensure this iconic building continues to serve the Launceston community for decades to come. The council oversaw the restoration of historic bluestone retaining walls within Ockleby Gardens, held training sessions for its crews as part of the flood preparedness work, and relocated thylacine sculptures from Brisbane Street Mall to Civic Square in response to community feedback. Following community consultation and in an effort to improve road safety for all users, the council lowered the speed limits on some roads across the city. The City of Launceston completed a program of infrastructure upgrades at Lilydale, including new dirt bike jumps, a new community playground, upgrade works to the Lilydale Football Club, and a new synthetic playing surface at the Lilydale Bowls Club. The council oversaw a public expression of interest process for the historic Frederick Street Infant School building, seeking a new community use for the building into the future. A public expressions of interest process was also held to find suitable artists for the city's largest public art mural project, transforming the facade of the Patterson Street East car park. The council installed dedicated parking zones for rental e-scooters across the CBD, launched a spring clean Rocherlea project in the northern suburbs, and worked with Stadiums Tasmania to develop a memorandum of understanding on the future ownership of UTAS Stadium. Council staff headed up the annual lighting of the Christmas tree event in the Brisbane Street Mall, installed new decorations across the city, and launched a new children's decorating initiative called Deck the Malls. The council committed the last tranche of funding for a major redevelopment of the popular Launceston Road Safety Centre, selected Riverbend Park as the location for the city's first pump track, and announced plans for the future of the NTCA complex. During the year, council also completed maintenance works on the Inverness flood levy, published new Minecraft maps for the city using open data, and began planning for a major redevelopment of the Princess Theatre and Earl Arts Centre complex. In total, the council invested $28.5 million across 144 infrastructural projects this year, ranging from footpath upgrades to play equipment, and from stormwater pipes to sports fields. This $28.5 million expenditure was up 59% on the previous financial year and represented the largest capital works program for the City of Launceston in the past 7 years. Following the failure of a privately owned retaining wall, the council was forced to close the popular Cataract Walk recreational trail linking Kingsbridge and the Cataract Gorge Reserve. The council oversaw complex technical repairs to reopen the trail in time for the busy summer period. More than 10,000 tonnes of FOGO material was processed at the Launceston Waste Centre, with more than half of all eligible households in the municipality now using the curbside FOGO collection service. Working in partnership with Launceston Central, the council's business activity survey showed that there were 1,193 businesses in the Central Activity District. The council undertook community consultation in its homelessness statement of commitment document, rolled out new smart car parking occupancy signage, and oversaw 9 fuel reduction burners in parks and reserves across the municipality. During the year, the council introduced the first electric truck in a Tasmanian government fleet, launched the city's first repair cafe initiative, and held 4 workshops designed to assist Launceston's small business sector. The council took steps to protect Launceston's history, beginning restoration works on City Park's Children's Jubilee drinking fountain, and developed new heritage precincts across the city as a part of its Heritage List Review project. All in all, it's been a huge year of progress at the City of Launceston, and we cannot wait to achieve even more in partnership with our community in 2024-25.
Cool. So as a part of that, the recommendation at 5.2, I don't need a decision on that, just on this one. The recommendation is that council receives the City of Launceston annual report for the year ended the 30th of June and submits 1 copy of the annual report to the Director of Local Government and 1 to the Director of Public Health. Receives the Launceston Flood Authority annual report for the period 30th of June 24 and notes the Queen Victoria Museum and Art Gallery annual report 23-24 was received by council at its meeting that was held on the 30th of October. Somebody to move? Mr. Smith. Seconded by Councillor Walker. Mr. Smith, any further comments around the annual report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an excellent document, and I'm very proud of it. I think the council staff officers and councillors have contributed well, and I make comparisons with other councils' areas, and I think Launceston certainly is something that I think other councils will be looking up to, because I think starting in this room with the conduct of the councillors, I think it's exemplary, certainly compared to other councils around Tasmania. So it certainly warms the cockles of your heart. I think the council is in very good stead, and I'm very proud of the morning crew that start the day in Launceston with the cleaning. I think they do a really good job. I know how hard work it is, and I think that really sets the tone for the city when you see how clean it is in the morning. And I think visitors arriving and the museums and all the facilities, I think, is something to be very proud of, and that's why so many people want to live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councillor Walker is the seconder.
I thank the mover of the motion for those generous words, and I would reiterate that to some degree it is such a large organisation for a local council. So many irons in the fire at the moment. A relatively new mayor, rather new CEO, but it actually augurs extremely well for the organisation that we're embarking on new journeys with lots of exciting things that need resolving that we've worked on in the past few years, but so many new ideas as well. And I think most of that is encapsulated in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any further comments from the room? None around the table either? Okay. Putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? It's the majority of the room. Thank you. The motion is carried. Notices of motion at 6.1. We have a notice of motion. First one up is the signage for personal mobility devices. The recommendation is that the City of Launceston Council review the rules and signage as they relate to the operation of PMDs or e-scooters in the Launceston CBD. Now, I have the mover of the motion as Mr. Smith. If there isn't a seconder, the motion fails. And if the motion is successful, it goes into debate for the next available council meeting to be discussed. Clarification on that, CEO?
Thank you, through the chair. If the motion is moved and seconded, it can, as I understand, be debated now.
Yeah.
Correct, no decision. We'll go to the next available council meeting being in January, where council will then debate it, and should council then choose to support it, then it becomes an active motion of council.
Thank you, CEO. So Mr Smith moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Walker. Mr Smith.
I couldn't have said that better myself. This is, I have a question first, if I may, I have a map, and I don't know if you can put the map on the screen, but it's a heat map showing
Do we have it? Yeah, cool.
scooters, figure 17. And I just want to confirm that it is in the agenda, the heat map, it's marked figure 17. The dark purple areas, I just want to confirm that those are high use areas. So most of the city has a bit of activity, it appears, but the highest uses are these dark purple spots. This is a council prepared document. It's called the e-scooter trial evaluation report. Is that a question an officer could answer, please?
CEO, do we have capacity to answer the... Okay, just some clarification on the question, Mr Smith, again, please.
Yes, I can hold it up for you. There's a map in the e-scooter trial evaluation report. The map it's called a heat map, and it shows these dark purple areas. Are they?
Yes, sorry. That's not
Do you recognise this?
I know the report you're referring to. It would appear that that is the case, but I'm not...
That's the most active area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assuming that this is in the document where it says report, this is the contribution I made, and you don't have the nothing available?
It's coming.
It's coming, right. So I made the contribution of the report, and the council officer responded with their response. The malls bylaw that it refers to controlling, that council believes, is Schedule 2 of the malls bylaw covering Charles Street and St John Street. And I think there's a problem in council's interpretation, advertising, and what it says publicly about scooter areas that are permitted. It says Charles Street, the area from the shop front to the curb edge of the widened footpath in Charles Street between Patterson and York. So in Launceston, essentially, that's 2 blocks of Charles Street at the end of the mall. St John Street, it says the area from the shop front to the curb edge of the widened footpath in St John Street. So when we don't have it on the screen, but there's a map that Launceston uses, and it actually shows the centre block, and it would suggest that those areas are highlighted in red. If you go to the map, you have a page, spatial apps map. It sort of shows that it doesn't, on one side, include that which is the footpath and the street of George Street, but it does Charles. Then there's a heat map, and you can see it would suggest that the most active in Launceston city centre area is that area that I just read out as those sections. If you go to the next page, is a scooter hire rental app, and that's the plan it shows, which clearly it doesn't include these streets. There's another map of me having taken a ride on a scooter. It shows you clearly I went up George Street there. That's another area you shouldn't be able to go. And then, of course, there's another one which is maybe between the hospital and the mall. Again, you shouldn't be able to get that section of Charles Street, and you can. And then there's one going from York Street, me on a scooter, down. And incredibly, as it happens, I ran into councillors and the mayor who questioned me as to why I was riding in that area. And of course, we'll never know whether I was allowed or not. But from today, possibly, if people in the room were to vote for the motion, it would go, as you say, to the next meeting. But it would ask, and this is all I ask, that you review the rules and signage. It doesn't say, as the officer says, that I'm asking for signage, and I understand you have no budget for it is unbudgeted. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking to draw focus on this, that where the pedestrian areas are, particularly the CBD centre streets, really it's not compatible. And as you know, Mr. I'm there we go. Probably one of the bigger users of scooters in the city, but I know the expression on people's faces, it's just not appropriate to be even at 10 kilometres an hour on these streets. And that is the black dots where I metaphorically ran into the mayor and a large gathering of councillors. So I would ask you to vote for this. It has no financial implications. Nothing comes of it. It would merely appear as an item for consideration on a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smith. As the seconder, any further comments? Yeah.
Yes, I think you'll note from the officer's comments that there's some concern, or not alarming concern, that there is probably insufficient signage when it comes to the exclusion zones, notwithstanding our constituents' observations that the exclusion zones don't necessarily work as well as we might think they do. So I think there's investigation to be done. I think it is. I can understand that when it comes to signage, there's limited resources and that type of thing. But at this stage, it's only the investigation. So I think it's essentially asking for a desktop study, and maybe some interaction with the providers of the scooters in regards to the anomalies between the heat map and the exclusion zones.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Further comments from Councillor Harris.
Yes, I think the problem is that the exclusion zones require the scooter to triangulate itself off the mobile phone network, and that does not allow enough granularity to stop someone being able to ride on the footpath compared to being able to ride on the road. And so that is probably why you're seeing the heat maps, because people would try to ride the scooter as close as they can to the CBD, and hence that's why I'm very much in support of Robin's motion to have signage on all of the entries to the CBD that says no scooters, because the main problem is not necessarily the hire scooters that we have some control over. It is in fact all our purchase scooters that we have no control over, that children and adults will ride everywhere that they feel they want to go. And we should have signs up to exclude them from the CBD area. So happy to support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Any further question, Councillor Kai?
Yes, I have a question. If we have a sign saying that they're not allowed to go into the CBD, is there somewhere they can park it and walk into the CBD and come back to the scooters, or how would that work?
Yes, I imagine it would be very similar to bicycles, and you would find a place to, if you felt comfortable, chain it to. But that's something that we could, I'll fold them up and walk with them perhaps. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Harris. Cool. Any further comments around the room, on the table? Okay, well, let's put it to the vote then. All of those in favour? The motion is carried. Okay, 6.2, we have the traffic trial lane removal, Charles Street and Patterson Street. The recommendation is that council trial to remove a lane of traffic in Charles Street between Brisbane Street and Patterson Street, and Patterson Street between Charles Street and St John Streets here in Launceston. The mover is in the room, so Mr Smith, 2 minutes. And a seconder?
For the purposes
Yep.
of discussion.
Councillor Walker, as the seconder. Thank you, Mr Smith. Just 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to be proved wrong. I don't think that turning Charles Street and one block of Patterson Street into a two-way street will stop blockies in Launceston, and that's what's been promulgated in City Heart Stage 2. It's driven partly by the Gell report and partly by the Launceston City Heart Project two-way street conversion. I really don't think, I see converting those 2 blocks represents less than 15% of the blocky route, which is nearly 2 kilometres long. I don't think it's going to make any difference. In fact, it might make it more interesting. The blocky route, by putting effectively what's a chicane in it, really would make race car drivers more interested. So I don't see how that's going to stop blockies. It just in my mind, it just isn't, but I want to be proved wrong. I'd like you to try a trial to prove that one lane of traffic does not end the blockies. Try it on a Friday, Saturday night. You know it isn't going to do it. I know it isn't going to do it, but I don't have words to convince the council. I can't fight the reports. I don't have the vocabulary or the time to prove that it's not going to stop the blockies. So this trial, you could try it one night, 2 nights, see if it makes any difference whatsoever. There's a way to test the traffic volumes and the noise and all the other problems experienced with blockies, but please, I really don't think that turning these 2 single blocks, less than 15% of the blocky route, when there's 8 traffic lights and many turns, I don't think it's going to stop it. So please consider this. If you think it's worth trying, vote for it. If not, don't vote for it. But either way, I'd be interested to see.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. As the second to Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Just briefly, I do think I was, perhaps a little confused. I thought it would be more along the lines of turning that section of Charles Street into like up the avenue where it is one-way, single lane, a traffic calming exercise, and in which case I would be more supportive. Nonetheless, I understand what you are trying to achieve with this. I think this reference to the blocky route is probably something that stopped happening a few years ago in the sense that may be a symptom of the roads that we have, but really it's more about pedestrian friendliness. It's about cycling friendliness or alternative transport. It's also certainly about slowing traffic movement in the CBD and making it more amenable for people to shop and whatever else. So, yeah, the focus on the blocky route, I think if one street's closed, then there's probably going to be another street that gets used to some extent. And I don't think that can be the main focus. So therefore, I'm still in 2 minds about whether I do support this, but I'll hear from the table.
Further comments? Councillor Harris.
Yeah, look, I don't support Mr. Smith's motion in this case. The blocky route is in fact, was in my day, Charles Street, Patterson Street, George Street, York Street. Hence, when you're changing those 2 things, you're changing more than 15%. Perhaps it's got longer since I was a young lad. However, the blocky route exists because I can line up on every one of those streets next to someone else and rev my motor and race him to the next traffic light or round the corner. So hence, reducing the amount of one-way streets and introducing 2-way streets with 1 lane in each direction, then that is what stops the blocky route, because I can't line up next to you to race you, I've got to start behind you. And that is more problematic when I want to race. So that's why I do not support the motion today.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Further comments around the table or around the room? Okay. Councillor Kai?
Well, Mr. Smith's motion is pretty much just saying to give it a try for like a week or 2 weeks, or as you said, a day or 2 days. It doesn't hurt to give it a try before we actually implement it. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kai. Okay. There being no more further comments, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is lost. Okay, got a notice of motion here around making a bylaw for early discount provisions for parking infringements. The recommendation is that the City of Launceston makes a new bylaw, generally in the terms of the current parking facilities by law number 2 of 2023, with the following early discount provisions for all infringement notices issued under clause 7 with penalty units corresponding as published as a part of this agenda. Mr. Smith is the mover. And a seconder? Okay. Okay, Councillor Britton's seconding it, so we will have a discussion. So let's get to those questions first then. So I've got a question with Councillor Gibson first.
Thanks so much. There was a body of work that had commenced with regard to looking at particular areas of the city and particular mechanisms with regard to our previously endorsed decision around the bylaw. It was prior to CO starting 4 or 5 months ago, because there was considerable concern around particular pockets of the city and people overrunning, for example, at the aquatic centre and being charged, as per the endorsed policy of council, $90 for their ticket. Before considering this motion, is there any update from either of the acting general managers as to where that work is at, given I think one at least was involved with it at the time?
Sure.
Sorry, through the chair, we'd have to take that on notice. Sorry, I'm not aware, and neither is the acting general manager with us. So unfortunately, we'd have to take that on notice.
Thank you. Further question, Councillor Kai.
Similar to what Councillor Gibson said, because when we voted it through with the 39% increase, I did bring up to see if we can get that looked into, bringing the bylaw of the discount back. And at the time, I think it was Shane was it Shane or Michael was the CEO at the time, said that we talked about it around the table, saying to reverse it or to bring it back was going to take 18 months or something along that line. And I remember we did push for it to happen. So I'm not sure. I was going to ask the same question as to what's happened with that and where are we at, because if we've already started to try and reverse, because from memory, I think the bylaw was that if you park on street, you get the discount, but if it was off street, I think the bylaw was that the discount disappeared, and then we were hoping to bring it back. I was going to ask Deputy Mayor, who said to me at one stage that you were working also into trying to bring that back. So I was just wondering how that's going as well.
Thank you, Councillor Kai. Well, we have a question from the Deputy Mayor who might be able to encompass
my
that.
question's roughly the same thing, because this actually has been raised.
Yes.
And at officer level said they were looking at it, because I said it's a bylaw. I said realistically we could sort of suggest, even if we didn't change the bylaw, while we were changing the bylaw, we could actually have an internal policy that said, in the event that you're caught in this, we'll give you a discount anyway, pay half the price. And I don't know whether Duncan's had a chance to look at that or not, but I know ex-GM Louise Foster was looking at that for me.
Okay. Just the little one there. Just press your button on.
So sorry, I only caught the end of that question. If I could...
Just in relation to the bylaw, where we need 12 months to change it back, where we lost the discount on people who were parking off street and getting fined. I spoke to, as our General Manager, Foster, about it, and she said that she was working through with you, and it was just a matter of getting on your desk to get to whether there was a way we could work around that while we were waiting for the bylaw to come through, because I think it takes something like 12 to 18 months to change a bylaw. And this was something I think that was discussed at the recent local government meeting as well. Not specifically about bylaws.
So we have started working on that question. We're not in a position to say yes or no, but we can take the question away and come back fairly shortly.
Cool. Thank you, Duncan. Mr. Smith, is there any further clarification? As the mover, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I have,
it's encouraging to hear that's being worked on.
So I have a question, if I may. As I understand it, one of the areas covered would be Windmill Hill, and if you were infringed for an expired meter at Windmill Hill Pool car park, it'd be $101. I'm correct in that, and it would be, if you were to pay for the parking, it would only cost you $1 for 90 minutes. Do I have that right? That was
something like that.
Okay. So that would be, at that rate, I would have the calculation right that you'd be technically, if you got the fine, you'd be paying for 16.8 days of parking in one fine, but you don't have an officer that's able to answer that.
We can take a moment to look that up if that's, if you would like to continue.
I just want to make sure I got it right, because it's the backbone of what I'm saying. So.
$1 for 90 minutes.
In the car park closest to the pool, up around the Memorial, that was $2 per 3 hours.
Thank you. I'll speak to the motion if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. I got a parking ticket. It was actually at the in front of the museum. It was $101. I thought that was a lot for a parking ticket in Launceston. Yeah, you got to sell a lot of coffees to pay for that. If I'd have got the same ticket in the city, in the CBD, it would have only been $40, which is just the way it goes for exactly the same offence. And I don't think that's right. And I looked back at where this came from. The difference is a discount offered if you're in the city centre. On the 15th of June 2023, when this bylaw that brought this high fine into existence, the officer wrote here, and I'll quote, "To ensure consistency across the legislative controls available to council, the draft bylaw has removed discounts for paying infringement notices early. The removal of the discounts is consistent with the approach taken by most other Tasmanian councils." So, of course, the first thing I did is look at those. Burnie, Devonport, Hobart, Clarence, they all have the discounts for early payment, which effectively bring the price down to comparable to what it is in CBD areas. So what I looked at is what could be done about it. And unfortunately, you'll see in the report, and that was written by me, that's not officer comments, it says, however, as it stands today, there are the unintended consequences. If council were to give a discount, thereby undercutting the existing penalty, etc., it creates complications. That's why you just can't do it. It makes it harder. If someone weren't able to pay, you've compromised yourself. So essentially, if council were to be of a mind to make this same bylaw exactly the same, but with this table of discounts in, which offers a number of discounts for the offences of essentially not paying for parking, you could avoid, and there is legislation, the Tasmanian government has legislation, you could avoid the long and costly, timely process. Could I ask for a 2-minute extension, please, Mr. Mayor?
If there's a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the regulatory statement isn't required because essentially it's only a minor amendment. It's a minor addition to the existing bylaw. So it would be very much more straightforward to amend this existing bylaw. Now, I did hear some comment around the table that it's been worked on, etc. It's been out there for a long time. A lot of people have paid this fine. I've noticed in the officer notes they say, you know, and it's not surprising that they don't get people again because you wouldn't ever want to go back there and get another $101. I think, you know, I mean, you could go further and clamp their car or I mean, there are higher fines you could put on, but you wouldn't want to. And I don't think this is right, not in Launceston. I think if someone's in all the other cities in Tasmania, if there's a system where within 14 days you pay, it's cheaper, then after 28 it becomes a little bit more, and ultimately it's $101, and after that you have to go before the magistrate. So I would ask you to at least consider this today, take it to the next stage, which would be a council meeting, and by then perhaps there could have been some more legal advice. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councillor Britton is the seconder.
Just a question, if I can, that as I stood up, I forgot. I might go a different way. Look, I know there was a fairly large body of work done, I think, to actually put our parking tickets where they are currently today. And my question was, it's my understanding that we were one of the last, if not the only, council that was still doing an early discount. Was that correct?
There are some councils that have early discounts and some that do not.
Okay. Well, yeah, look, obviously, look, I don't think I'll be in support of this motion today. Well, I know it was only earlier on this year that we changed it internally. We had our reasons, and we had our reasons why. Obviously, a large parking fine is there. We can quantify it 1,000 different ways, but ultimately it's a deterrent to pay the parking. I know it's expensive, but the alternative is to just pay the dollar. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Britton. I've got Deputy Mayor.
I'm actually going to stand to support it because I think our intention when we actually voted for it is we thought that the discount flowed over to the other. I don't think we really understood that well, I certainly didn't when we were there. And I think that I'll take Mr. Smith's words that I think that it was, it is a lot to pay for a car park in the aquatic centre, particularly when you're rushing around with 1 million kids trying to get them in and out of the process. But I just think we should be just consistent with our on-street and off-street car parking in regard to it. And I think that's what we thought we were getting, and we only found out after we voted that we weren't. And the unfortunate part about it is the one we have to change is takes a long time to do it.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
I would like also support the motion because we feel that many people actually, they get fined, not because they are avoiding payment, because they're a bit late. How often do we say, oh, it's half an hour, and as you rush 2 minutes late and they have, fine. The same thing, how often do we park it and there is arrow which says removal and the other one, allow 1 hour, and then you read it differently? It happens so often. We are human. And I think we should be considerate. We are not here just to punish people like that. Give them consideration for mistakes, which happen so often now. And therefore, I will support this motion.
Thank you, Professor. Councillor Gibson.
Thanks so much. I'll also be supporting the motion, not because I wanted to duplicate work that's already happening, but it further exemplifies the need from the community to look at it. Mr. Smith, who has a business, says he struggles to pay it. Many of the people who contacted Councillor Kai and others, myself included last year, were unemployed, were carers, were working with disabled children, etc., non-able-bodied children at the aquatic centre, and they too were struggling with it. This isn't a criticism of officers. We endorsed the policy. We didn't necessarily understand its full implication. I'm really pleased to hear that it's on the list of things to be done, and I think this motion, if supported today, will add further weight to it from a community perspective.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Any further comments? Councillor Kai, question.
I have a question. So if we were to move this motion, which I fully support this motion, by the way, but if we were to move the motion, will that speed up quicker than having to wait that 18 months that we were told when I first brought up the...
It won't necessarily speed up the process, but it will be a very public-facing decision to be made.
Okay, I think so. Yes, I fully support this. Like I said back then, I felt that when we were asked to vote on it, I didn't feel that we were given all the information needed. It wasn't until after it was voted through that when I was contacted by a lot of people who got tickets saying that it's gone from $30 to $100, and that's when I questioned where the 39% goes in, because 39% of $30 was not $100, and therefore I would fully support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for bringing it up.
Councillor Walker.
Question, if I may. Thank you, Chair. Is it true that we can change the penalty amounts ourselves, or does that too have to go back to ratification with some state department or other?
Yeah, so if we want to amend the bylaw, that's something that we can do.
If we want to change the penalty rates, if we want to bring in a discount, if we want to create conformity between them, I support the motion.
Further comments around the room or the table? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried.
I think there's actually a benefit in doing the figures.
I do agree with Alex though. No, community facing. Okay, notice of motion number 4, free parking promotion advertised available 7 days per week. The recommendation is that the City of Launceston establish a consistent approach to its promotion of offering free parking 3:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Clarification just from the CEO or the team around the availability of our car parks that are open on the 6th and the 7th day of the week, Saturdays and Sundays. So just throughout, just getting that clarification before we start the conversation.
Promotion runs from 3:30 till 5:30 Monday to Friday. The period is available on Saturday and Sunday in car parks that are open at that times. It was initially done as a promotion to encourage people to come back into the city after school hours though. So that's possibly why the promotion was Monday to Friday, but it does apply on weekends as well.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Mr. Smith is the mover of the motion. And someone to second. Yep, okay, we've got a seconder. Yep, Councillor Gibson is the seconder.
I have a question, please, if I may. Why, and I don't recall why, but you speak of re-engagement in those times. Was it directly, and when I read the officer's notes, to attract after school people on the school run, or was it aimed to fill latent capacity as a marketing alternative to the first hour free, or as council gave in the city? Is that clear?
I will have to take that on notice, I'm sorry, because the decision was made well and truly before my time, and I can't speak to that, I'm sorry, and yep.
Councillor Harris.
I may be able to answer. The effect of the closure of chicken feed and then Birchall's had on the CBD trade was significant after 3:30. And so I think the two things occurred during, coming when Birchall's closed in 2017, chicken feed was a few years before that. So I think that was the basis of getting people to come back into town, so therefore offer them free parking. They did have latent capacity, but I think those two things actually affected. I know from a Telstra shop perspective, once the Birchall's shut, there were very little traffic after 3:30, where when Birchall's was operating, there would be traffic in the shop till 5:30 and they were pushing them out the door, trying to shut the door.
Councillor Gibson with some clarification also.
Thanks. Look, it was well before even Birchall's. It was in the vicinity of 2008. It was a city prom initiative. It's been going, it's a legacy item. It's been going for a long time. Number of benefits were seen. It was seen as definitely something to activate spaces after school at a time that traditionally the CBD was dormant, and something that has remained, I think, as an incentive with the promotion, i.e. the giraffe, not giraffe, are they giraffe? Zebra, promotional stickers and signs and the like, all being undertaken by City Prom at the time.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Another question, Mr. Mayor. The Central Activities District Parking Implementation Plan 2021 talks of free parking around the city, and it mentions daily, 3:30 to 5:30. Is that what council intends, to offer it daily, although it's
So Acting General Manager Rogulan said that it is daily. It's been heavily promoted as Monday to Friday. It is in the report, but it is available to those car parks that are open on Saturdays and Sundays. It is still available.
Thank you. All right, well, I don't know whether it was deliberate that the signage is different. You've put new signs outside Patterson Street East. All of the shops around town that have the enjoy free parking in the city, you haven't got that up, but show weekdays. But the council's website says Monday to Sunday, which effectively is 7 days in those times. I don't know why. I don't know why you wouldn't want to make the most of it. If the computer gives it away anyway when you leave, it's cost neutral. Why would you hide a promotion under a bushel if you were? I mean, weekend traders, some businesses do particularly well, and if there's latent capacity on the weekend, I really can't see why you wouldn't uniformly say that it's available every day of the week, every week of the year. I really can't see why anyone wouldn't vote for this, because it's cost neutral. There's capacity in the car park, and really it will be very gratefully received by those that make the most of it. And it's always nice to get something free, and if it keeps people in the city a little bit longer even, I think there's another benefit there. So I'd ask you to vote for this. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Councillor Gibson is the seconder. Okay. A question, Councillor Kai?
I have a question because I've gone through town Saturdays and Sundays roughly about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I don't know if there's many shops open on the weekend during those hours?
Yes.
So questions, do we know if there are many shops open during those hours, whether this is going to benefit? Because I'm just trying to get my head around whether to
So
support.
Councillor Kai, it already is an option. I think Mr Smith is just looking for some further promotion around letting people know that it is available on the weekends,
Right.
which is what I read into the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other further comments around the table or the room? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? The motion is carried. Notice the motion number 5, questions without notice on agenda items. The recommendation is that the City of Launceston Council adopt a general meeting policy of allowing a public question without notice relating to an agenda item be permitted to be answered. Mr Smith is the mover, or a seconder? It's okay. Yes, it's been seconded by Mrs Smith. Mr Smith.
I have a question. This is, I think, what I would describe as an unwritten rule.
Okay.
I think it's clear from the officer's comments that it doesn't appear in the local government meeting regulations. It doesn't appear anywhere on council's policies for meetings. Is that correct? It's just a policy that you passed from,
yes,
presumably Lanzetton and Dickinson and Waddle and
yes, yep, that's
Bean
correct.
and- It is, yes, thank you.
Yes. No, Mrs Smith was the seconder.
So you do enforce this rule, Mr. Mann? No.
Yes.
To me, such a meeting is the very time I would expect questions to be asked, because you'd have members of the public come in, you have the ear of the council, you have the officers qualified to answer it. To me, I can't think, in fact, I would go further than to say it's the most relevant time to answer a question. I'd actually give priority to someone that came in to ask a question at a council meeting about something that was on the agenda over something that wasn't on the agenda item. So I take it completely the other way. So I don't know how you feel, and I know you don't take it personally, and this has just been handed on infinitum. No one knows where it came from. But to me, I couldn't think of a more rule you wouldn't have, and it's certainly not there. And actually, where I write, I would say in the officer response, they don't really give an opinion whether it should or shouldn't. But I'm quite happy to leave that there. I think I've said enough.
Thank you. Anything further from the seconder? Councillor Walker.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's a written rule, but it makes sense, of course, that the Mayor is not going to be able to always speak on behalf of operational matters. He needs to consult with staff or the relevant person. It is the case sometimes that I'm sure a question could be answered, but no one would be wanting to make an error in that process. I hear what you're saying. You know, as you say, there's no written law, so in a sense, your motion here, allowing public questions without notice to be answered, what you're also saying is there's no law to say that couldn't happen. So in other words, it may happen one day, and that there's no need for this notice of motion. I might be wrong, but that's the way I see it, that if there is no law, I can't recall seeing any, as you say, in the Meeting Regulations Act, I can't recall seeing anything in regards to that. You need to ask a nice Dorothy Dixer one day and see if the Mayor answers it.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Councillor Kai.
So my understanding is that the public is allowed to come in and speak on an agenda item. So,
Questions without notice.
and then we have questions without notice. And quite often I do find that when people do come and ask questions without notice, sometimes it is related to the agenda item. Wouldn't that be right? But I remember from memory, I thought I've had people come in to ask questions without notice regarding an agenda item, and you've said to them, it's on the agenda at 20.2. Do you want to come back later and ask then? So it is there, correct? So do we need to move a motion to include
Mr.
that in?
Smith's motion is saying that if they were to ask in questions without notice on a live agenda item, then the answer should be answered there and then and not have to wait
Wait till,
and not ask, because they not ask questions, but to speak on something isn't also allowing an answer. It's
So-
about the councillors hearing about what's being said and asking their questions in relation to what's been spoken on.
so yes and no in that term, like for example, Lisa that came in earlier today, she wanted to, I think, ask questions or speak about the monkeys. And we've gone through the questions without notice, but she couldn't speak until the monkey item comes on, which by then she had to leave. So in that sense, I guess it does make sense because she's missed out on having to speak as well. So I don't know, it's a bit hard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a question, Councillor Britton, then Councillor Professor Raze.
So, although it's not written anywhere, do we actually have a reasoning as to why we do it?
Anyone with more experience than me care to say why we do it?
If you're taking it from the floor, it's been a matter of course that
A matter
you
of
would
course.
take it on notice, because they're generally questions about operational matters from the public. They're not so much questions that the chair can answer easily, because you have to consult with staff who, you might get the CEO to answer it if he's knowledgeable or she's knowledgeable in that area, but beyond that.
Councillor Professor Raze, sorry, was next.
The way I understand it, it seems from our experience here is that if you take it because you want to give accurate information, there is no point. If you are hesitant, I don't think you should commit yourself, because these are important matters in the council meetings. But I wonder sometimes whether, if you are confident to give an accurate answer, you should have the choice. You can answer it straight away. So that's where it is.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Harris?
Yeah, I think probably the issue often is about DAs, and where people want to raise a question about a DA, and I think that then is an appropriate place not to give a response, because we have to sit as a planning authority and we will make a considered question about it. And so I think by allowing the question to be asked but not answered in questions without notice, it allows everyone to hear the question, and then even when it's another item that might be item 20 later on, well, you still heard the question sometime beforehand, and that can then be brought back up as a question to, you know, ask the officers or whatever concerned. So I think the process as it is has probably evolved to one that makes sense at the time, because we don't stop people from asking the question, even if it is about a DA. So, you know, I think leaving it as it is how I'd support it.
Any other comments from the table or the gallery? Okay, yes, yeah. Councillor Gibson.
Look, I'm going to support it today just
Yep.
because I think this policy is up for review anyway. I've been told it's a suite of policies like this that are going to be looked at. I think it's just another consideration that can be given. We can receive additional information from different sources that will further be unpacked as part of the review of that policy.
Yep.
I think in principle, it's a good idea. I think logistically, from a DA perspective, moving in and out of an authority, a planning authority, there could be some logistical challenges, and I think we should consider that as part of the review of the policy. So I'll be voting to see it explored further at the next council meeting.
Sure. Okay, any further comments? Putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is lost. Okay, number 6, which is activity permit conditions in the mall. The recommendation is that the City of Launceston Council resolves to include the following requirements in the guidelines for activities in the mall, parks and public and associated permit documentation. The permit holder is required to display a copy of a permit, authorisation to conduct an activity in the mall at the site for the duration of the activity. It lists the activities of boycotting, protesting, divesting or sanctioning of a legal product, business or industry as a not permitted activity in the mall. So moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Smith. A question before we get there, Councillor Dawkins?
From recollection, there was a time where we tried to restrict activity in the mall. I believe it was somebody who was of a religious persuasion who wanted to be able to talk to the community about their concerns about the end of the world. And we attempted to restrict that activity, were taken to court and lost.
Sure.
So I'm not sure that this is lawful,
Yeah.
but we will see.
Thank you, Councillor Dawkins, for that question and clarification. Yeah, I think so. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I have a question. Does Launceston have a speaker's corner?
Are you aware of the speakers? No?
Somewhere.
What does it mean?
Yeah. I don't think it carries any weight. But thank you.
Town crier.
I deliberately haven't mentioned the activities, particularly that I've noticed that council has given protesters and objectors permits to. So they've given a piece of paper, and once they're there, they can talk about any kind of orientation, they can talk about any kind of religious matter, and some very unsavoury matters and political almost anointed by the council to go right outside someone's premises and say some particularly disturbing things. Not to the extent the council wants to talk press over, which was over a technicality of who was an authorised officer, etc. It went to the federal court with Justice Tracy, I think it was. It's unlikely to happen again. A unique situation. He was a political activist pushing from Adelaide to Launceston to try and change the laws. This is about my exception to council actually giving out, firstly, a piece of paper to conduct this activity in a spot. Secondly, it says here, list the activity broadcasting investment and sanctioning business as not permitted activity. So it's not saying that they can't protest, it's just saying that these are things they can't do. And we know the products, particularly of Tasmania and certain persuasions that have been protested against, they get a loud hailer. It's usually when council isn't open. It's usually on a weekend, the busiest day of the week in the highest profile spot. Unfortunately, not a lot you can do about it. Police are very reluctant to get involved. So this, all I'm asking is if it were to list it as a not permitted activity, it's quite clear from the start that those things we won't give a permit. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It's a free country. It's a free malls. You can go anywhere and do anything. But it shouldn't be the business of the council giving people permission to do these things. I don't need more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anything as the seconder? Mrs. Smith was the seconder. Okay. Anything further around the table or the room? Okay, Councillor Harris.
From memory, when you're given permission to go into the mall, you're not allowed to approach people. They have to approach you.
Yes.
So what Mr. Smith has described is people breaking the condition of the permit. But perhaps not, because they were perhaps just yelling to anyone who was listening with a loud hailer. But it does seem like, I'm not sure why we need to have a look at this. I've not seen or heard of the issue, but I don't doubt it has happened. But I'm pretty sure that you had a condition where you could not approach people. They had to approach you.
Mr. Smith with the protesting with the shoes. Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Walker?
Oh, look, I think that may apply to political times. I'm not sure. Maybe it's general, but I'm pretty sure it's to do with political campaigning, that you're not meant to approach people. They have to come to you. Because otherwise, you're trying to sell a raffle ticket, but you just got to stand there and say nothing until someone comes and buys one. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Yeah. Anyway, no hawking and that sort of thing. Look, I think we'd be buying into trouble, because look, if someone is disturbing the peace, it's a police matter. And you call the police and you let them know that this person is harassing, haranguing, or whatever it might be. That's not a council matter. If someone wants to preach on the corner, and that is, you know, they're not breaking the law, that's the mad, crazy world we live in. And that's just the way it is. We have buskers, you know, we do have protests, and the right to protest, you know, should not be something that's ever jeopardised. That's a legitimate part of our society. So I'm not sure what this is referring to. The display of the permit, well, as long as they can prove they have it, but then who are they proving that to? Anyone who comes up and asks? I'm not sure how any of that really works. Maybe the council could have a website where we list people that have permits. That might be a way to ameliorate that situation where if you look on the website and they don't have a permit, then you might have a case to answer. But I don't know if what is being suggested is something I will support.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Further comments from the table or the room? Okay, putting it to the vote then. Oh. To close? Yeah.
I heard a number of things there, and I've deliberately chosen not to say the particular one that's drawn. But let me say it's been every Saturday, and I mean every Saturday, for over a year. Some of the topics they've been saying, some of the chanting, and absolutely unacceptable in a right-minded society to say that. But of course, it's a free country, and I give you a right to be able to say it, but I don't think they should have a permit from council to undertake that activity. And I've brought it to the attention of council. The customer service will give you all the documentation, it's all there, but I choose not to say it. But I think it's highly unfortunate. It's not what these permits are supposed to be issued for. They're for a charity drive or they're for an information session, not this particular style of protesting, and it's highly unfortunate. And there's been a few in the past, and some of the subject matter they choose to challenge is not appropriate for our retail strip, and that's where they're doing it, which is why I've brought this. And you're giving permission for someone, and the reason why I suggest they carry a permit is when a police officer comes up responding to a complaint, if they haven't got it and it's standard practice to have it, immediately there's no question, the police officer can deal with it. If it's wait till Monday morning, because of course it's a weekend, and then the council will open, you can find out it's too late. So that's the purpose for that. But I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A question, Councillor Kai.
Well, if it's an individual case, isn't there something we could do if we know who it is that we've given the permit or whoever's there? Wouldn't that be easily solved if it's not a huge range of the community doing it? It's just the odd ones here and there, and they're there every Saturday. Wouldn't that be easy to fix?
We can have a look into that, Councillor Kai. As Mr. Smith said, there's a plethora of information that's been provided. Okay, so putting this particular motion to the vote. So all those in favour? Against? The motion fails. But I think the conversation was worthy, so lost the battle, not the war. Notice of motion here. The reinstalment of 2 bronze thylacine statues in the Brisbane Street Mall. Recommendation that the City of Launceston resolves to return to the bronze statues D1 and D2 to the Brisbane Street Mall on a raised plinth or platform approximate to where they were originally installed. Somebody to move, Mr. Smith as the mover, a seconder. Purpose of discussion, Councillor Walker, if it wasn't for the purposes it would fail and we would continue. Mr. Smith and Councillor Walker as the second up. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is the most exciting one of all of them. It's unfortunate it's come to this. I have a question first. Did council actually do safety audits before they install these things? I've asked before and been told, were safety audits on these statues before they were placed in the mall conducted? And so
Sure. Do we have an officer that was here at the time that might be able to provide any information? We'll take that one on notice in terms of.
Thank you.
I think they arrived much smaller than was anticipated, is perhaps some commentary around the instalment. They shrunk on the way.
Mr. Mayor, is there any chance I had an image of the Hylocenes as the two in question? Is it possible to get that on the screen, please? And another question while we wait, if you could, Mr. Mayor. I read the officer notes. There seems to be no artist attribution to the tigers that have been installed in Civic Square. Have I just missed it? Is it out there? Is there something explained because they make much of the...
Yes, we do actually have a plaque. It's currently sitting in the office, ready for installation.
Thank you. Are there any more to be installed? Is another question that I dispersed around the mall. Is there some missing?
They've all been installed, including this skeleton bronze plate, which has been installed right down near the old Macquarie House fountain.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, thank you. You can see by the number of attachments of the correspondence and meetings I've attended trying to get the things raised so they were safe. And I don't know how it ended up that they left the mall altogether. Highly unfortunate. But the cost for it, I was told on the 16th of May 24, to move them from the mall to the Civic Square was $25,000. The quote to take two, which are the bottom two there, D1 and D2, and they were in the mall pair. My suggestion is to move those back in a way that looks not unlike on the front of the annual report on a rock would be ideal if council was of a mind to do that. But anyway, to get them up in the air. It was the theme of the mall, now we don't have a theme. It's highly unfortunate. I wouldn't ever expect council, it would be too embarrassing to bring them all back. But there's no reason why you couldn't have two there for the purposes of, I don't know, taking photographs and looking. I'm sure if the artist was happy for them to be moved around, I'm sure the artist wouldn't be beyond having two separate. I mean, they're not exactly all together here. Having two separate and go back to the mall. I look here where the officer comments, they say, and I can't quite make this out because I look at where they were in the mall, and if you could just go to all of the images where they were, when it says establishing trees or plants may have caused underground surface damage in the Brisbane Street Mall. I don't know what trees and plants they're concerned about, but I don't think that is of concern. It also says, and I don't think they look exactly natural there, but it's of consideration here. I think they look a bit stark and sad, but anyway, if the officer thinks that is natural, calling them art pieces, I don't know what they are. They're not pieces of art, but they're certainly, those two are much loved in the mall, although someone did fall over and break something on them. But we asked so many times, and there must be, I'd ask for 2 minutes extension, please, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kai is moving. Councillor Gibson is the second. Are all those in favour? Those against?
I don't think I can vote for myself.
No.
I think I can, actually.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Motion has failed, so we'll wrap up then.
I think you can, Mr. Mayor. I think you can.
Well, the one vote doesn't eliminate the need that there were more against. So let's just wrap up this
Very well.
first
I'll
bit
finish the sentence.
without the full extension.
Well, I was promised food, so I don't know about you. Thank you very much. I will leave it there. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay. Further comments? A seconder?
I don't support the motion. I did move it for the purpose of the discussion. I think they've done extremely well in the Civic Square. I think the mall itself is ripe for a substantial contribution, and sculpture is something that has been discussed. Not that there's any particular idea of what that will be, but it will be a lot more overwhelming than what those small statues were. I think in the situation they're in now, they do work really well. I understand the desire to have something back in the mall, and they were very iconic and Tasmanian and all that sort of thing. But let's work together and get something substantial and really enlivening in the mall in the near future.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Further comments around the table or the room? Councillor Kai?
I don't support these going back into the mall, but I would support something similar like that, but bigger, so it's less people tripping over them. For some reason, I don't know why, but when I'm going through the mall, I tend to be rushing as well. And while they are at the Civic Square here, I don't know if it's because there's grass and you're supposed to sit and relax or whatever, but everyone seems to slow down a bit while they're going through the Civic Square. We're going through the mall. I don't know if everyone's just rushing, but I think they would be a trip hazard going back into the mall, so I wouldn't support them. Unless we, like I said, if we get bigger ones to go in the mall. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kai. Councillor Professor Raze.
Oh, did I?
No?
Well, quickly, I thought the main reason why we decided to move them because of the safety and injury, young children or even adults with poor vision. It was very easy, like it can happen and injure themselves. So that was one of the reasons.
Thank you. Okay, anything to close, Mr. Smith?
Yes, just to be clear, when I mentioned in front of the annual report how you can see them set on a stone, that would give them the height, the benefit of safety. That was the intention of that, as opposed to it wasn't to put them back on the pavement. So I wouldn't have thought safety was an issue. This is only something to come to council to consider at the next meeting. Perhaps some work could be done, but two of them could quite easily come in. You've proved the artist is happy for them to be uninstalled and transferred somewhere else, and I think it wouldn't be beyond the pale to have at least a token going back for those Instagrammers that want to get some shots in the mall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is lost. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of our annual general meeting. We're going to resume our ordinary council meeting at 7:25. Thank you again for those in attendance. That's okay.